Today we're here with Qosmic Qadence, and we're going to be learning about his life and how he uses love and sacrifice, or how he endured love and sacrifice, rather, to get him to where he is today. When we start interviews, some of the things we do as an icebreaker is just ask the question, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
If I had to mention with 3 words,
okay,
it's going to bear definition.
Yes.
Crazy.
Oh, crazy?
Driven.
Okay.
And human.
Human. That's the first I've ever heard that. So why would you say crazy and human and what was the other one that you said?
Crazy, driven, human.
Driven and human.
I'm a crazy, driven human. It's a perfect sentence now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So crazy for me, as defined, I always tell people I'm admittedly crazy, and I know that there are multiple definitions. So when people hear crazy, and you'll probably say it when I'm done, like, that's not crazy at all. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But crazy because I am crazy enough to believe that I can achieve and accomplish anything, and I take those steps toward doing so.
Right.
And driven kind of ties into the crazy, where because I've seen a thing in my head, I believe that it can come to pass.
Right.
So I'm driven to literally manifest the things that I've seen, the visions that God has shown me. Yeah. I'm like, ooh. Whereas that's probably a difference between myself and other people. I'm not afraid of the things that I see.
Right.
I'm like, ooh, instead of being like, no, I don't want it, which is a change, a shift in dynamic from being younger to being old now. I'm like, no, I'm going for it.
Yeah. And
then human, I'm flawed. I'm a flawed individual. I feel, I hunger, I pain, I love, I do all these things. I'm a father. I'm all of these things, but a human being, overall first. And human being, like literally being human and not just like flesh. So I'm literally doing the humanitarian things to love and draw people in and create community and those sort of things. That's like being human to me. Definitely.
Those are 3 really great characteristics to describe yourself. I mean, anytime you're following your dream or your passion, I always feel like that's crazy when you're you're going after it. And you gotta have that drive in order to achieve those things. And I mean, we're all human, so like I can definitely understand.
I told you you'd agree by the time I was done.
I know!
And that wasn't even scripted. That's so awesome.
Right, that's crazy. See? That's crazy.
See?
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on this a little bit when you were talking about your drive and being human and the crazy in the beginning. Would you say that you know what your purpose is in life?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
At this point, yes.
Tell us about it. We want to know.
And it's not even like, would I say that I know it now? I'm glad that you asked that question.
Yeah.
Because I've always known. So I think that at 8 years old, God showed me a vision for my life. And the vision included me standing on a stage, and it was a sea of people, and I just remember seeing myself doing that and shrinking at the vision and just saying no. I literally told God no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lead people. I don't want to speak to people. I'm shy. I started telling myself all these different things. Like, that's not me.
Making excuses.
Yeah. And, oddly enough, I knew at that moment that my life was supposed to be one of service to those around me and leading these people and advising these people and counseling these people and comforting these people, because I was doing that already at 8 years old for my family.
Right.
So I would walk into a room and I would have, a family member sitting there and I'm like, hey, auntie or uncle, whomever. And I could literally walk into a room and they just start divulging family secrets or whatever's happening. How are you became like a counseling session. They would just open up and start telling me stuff. And then they would catch themselves after talking for a while to say, oh my gosh, I have to remind myself how old you are. You're so mature for your age.
At 8, like when you were young.
Super young. So I already knew that. And then the influence that I had over my friends, is with, I'm settling arguments all the time. Or and it's like, I wasn't even in an argument. Where I was like, look at him over here. What do you think about the thing? It's like,
right. A lot of times I feel like people that go after their passion or their dream, end up like in the beginning, you can tell if it's really something that is supposed to be for you or not, because it usually isn't that much money.
Right.
It usually is a lot harder, because then you can weigh out and see who's really supposed to be in it, and it's really supposed to be for them. You know what I mean?
And I honestly believe that money's attached to our purpose. So, you know, there's this common notion in society that you have to chase your dream, or you have to chase money, and people always say it, I'm on this paper chase, I'm chasing this. And the word chase implies that something is running from you if you're chasing it. So if I can't chase my dreams, my dream is for me, why am I chasing it? That doesn't make sense. So some of these things are like semantics for me, and coming into that understanding of words and really taking words at face value. And I'm not chasing purpose. I'm striving toward, you know, a mastery of self, you know, in that sense. And that comes with an eradication of fear, doubt, a true understanding that it's not about me, it's bigger than me. So the visions that I've seen, or the things that happen when doors open, they're not opening because of me, they're opening for me. And then it's just up to me to kind of get into those spaces and navigate and do what I'm supposed to do.
Now, this month's theme is love and sacrifice. Do you feel like in order for one to find or determine love, it could be with your career, your family, your friends, wealth, etc. These are all things that we touched on. You must endure and overcome many sacrifices? I
think that you do. It's just because of that adjustment. So at every level of loving anything, loving a person, if I'm going to add a person to my life dynamic, then I'm bringing a person into a settled space that I've, you know, sort of, you know, fallen into or sort of journeyed into. And now all of a sudden I bring Brittany in, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna date and let's fall in love and do all these wonderful things, but you have to be a functional part of my life. So I have to figure out how to make sacrifices now, because I was by myself doing these things and this worked for me, but I have to sacrifice now to kind of adjust and, you know, fit you in, or how do you fit into the dynamic of what I'm doing. So that's business, that kind of covers the spectrum. Not just adding to my life as a relationship partner, but if you're going to be in my life in business now, there's something that I'll have to figure out, as not to allow business to dominate my entire life. I have to fit you in, so sacrifices in that sense, sure.
How would you define, in your own words, love?
Love.
I know that's a hard one.
No, love is beautiful. Love is a beautiful concept. Love is an even better space to live in. So love implies, you know, sacrifice, which you know is what we're talking about. So even if that's my children, if I know that I have to provide for them, put food on the table, if I have to be responsible for another person's happiness and well-being, you know, all those things. Love is sacrifice. You know, love is dedication. Love is commitment. You know, love is action and not just talk. You know, love's a lot of different things. Beautiful, but many faceted. I think that a lot of times we lock ourselves into an ideal of love and what love should look like, instead of embracing like everything that comes as a result of love, and what other parts of ourselves we're exposed to because of love, or the things that we do in the name of love.
I know that on the social platform, and then just in the community, you know, you're known for a lot of different things. So teacher, poet, a singer, you know, all these different things. How would you say like that came about? Like, I know that like
I told you I'm crazy.
I mean, those are so many different, you know, crazy and, you know, amazing talents and gifts to have. Like, when did you discover that you were so talented with these things?
Probably before 8.
Yeah, before 8?
Yeah. You know, with the not unfortunate thing, and this is probably why I'm in, it's definitely why I'm in such a space of openly sharing my gifts. I realized something a couple weeks ago. I was thinking, I've held on to all these gifts forever. Now I'm old. So I remember having my little boom box that I got for my birthday. It's dope. It's a little Sony tape deck. It's like a double tape deck. I was so excited. I can make my own little mixtapes. I can record stuff from the radio, play, record, push down at the same time. Old school.
I remember those days.
And And I remember singing into my recorded device to myself, or just singing to the device. And then I recognized that there was a little microphone that I can record my own voice, so I would sing to myself. Right. So I felt like I had had a bit of a singing voice then. And the ability to write, I was introduced to poetry, and that was like something that was really fun for me to stretch myself kind of structurally, to do some things with words. That was maybe second grade when I was initially introduced to poetry, and then fifth grade I really fell in love with poetry. And then I held on to these gifts forever though. Yeah. So these were things that I even the singing voice, I just kind of held on to it until I finally had the courage to share it with a few of my close friends. And I'd go to them and I'm like, hey, here's this, I'm singing. I'm like, oh my God, you're incredible. Come over here. We're going to like show you off. And they're like, you got to hear this. He's going to sing. And I like sing, and you know, people were embracing it. And then I remember they took me to some group of like mixed boys, girls, and I'm maybe, I don't know, man, maybe 10, 11. Wow, nice. And I just remember it's like singing for this group, and I'm levitating at this point because it's been so well received from the other people. And I just like, whatever, I sing for this group, and the boys in the group, I mean, at this point my voice is like crazy underdeveloped. Yeah. So I'm like Boys Club of Harlem, like high pitched voices. It was insane. And I remember singing for the group, for that group, and one of the boys in the group just yells out, he sings like a girl. And in that moment, I remember, like, it was almost like nails screeching on a chalkboard. And I was like, and I remember in that moment making a decision to never sing again. And I was like, I'm never going to sing again. That's it. I'm never going to sing for anybody else. I'll just keep it to myself. Yeah. And I literally did that until I moved to Phoenix and started to share my art like 3 years ago. Right.
And you're from DC, right? Yeah. So you're from DC. You moved to Phoenix 3 years ago.
5 years ago, I moved to Phoenix. So
5 years ago, you moved to Phoenix. How long after moving here did Poetic Soul come along?
So Poetic Soul.
With answering that, tell me about how did it come about?
How I got here. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's kind of go through a journey.
Yeah.
So I moved here from DC 5 years ago to manage operations for an entertainment company called Premier Events. Really awesome company that hosted a performing arts competition 3 times a year at Disney World. Okay. So a lot of times people see me hosting events here and they're just like, oh, this is like the poet guy who's doing events. And I'm like, no, I have a background in events. Event planning, event hosting, sort of on a larger scale. Yeah. I was hands-on with a lot of the coordination and planning and like running, and it's a small business, so we essentially were like all hands on deck with whatever people could help in terms of specialty. So moved here to manage operations for that company. I'd worked for them 5 years prior on the East Coast. We moved here, and we were working 16 to 18 hour days, and it was just kind of grueling. It was debilitating. It was exhausting, to be honest. And I'm not a person who sleeps. I don't sleep a lot, but I was tired. I was exhausted. And I was like, I need sleep. If I'm asking for sleep, I'm like sleep. So I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually just fatigued. Right. And I wanted to walk away. So I eventually got into the space of wanting to quit. And my mama ain't raised no quitter. Yeah. So I was like, maybe I shouldn't quit. Maybe I should just save money until the end of the year, and then I'll like walk away. And literally a month later, I was at a concert, and I'm careful to like speak only life into existence or into the universe. So I was at a John Mayer concert, and I'm like on the second row, and I'm watching John Mayer perform. And in that moment, I was like, this dude is literally living his purpose. This is why he was put here. Right. And I just watched him lose himself in that performance, and I was like, I gotta quit. Like, I can't work here anymore. Yeah. And 2 days later, my salary was taken from me. Salary portion of my earnings was taken from me. I was just expected to work for commission. I was like, I'm not doing that. Wow. So I quit. Yeah. And it was interesting. I was like, darn it, John Mayer.
It's crazy how those things kind of work out.
Yeah. So God knows the universe is always listening. Yeah. So at that point, I just realized that I had to do something, but there was no way I could ever work a job again. Right. I just felt like the job, for everything that I did with that company, from the coordination of events to actually did corporate presentations also. So I would stand in front of a room and actually give the presentation for the company. I just kind of felt like, to be 100% honest, Barack Obama's president at the time. I'm like a tall, handsome guy, well-spoken in front of a room, looked great in a suit. And I was like, I'm Barack Obama to these people. We were at auditions in Iowa. Nobody in Iowa looks like me. And I'm just in front of a room full of people who just didn't look like me, and I was like, "Yo, this is not cool. I'm misusing my magic, you know." Yeah. So at that moment of having walked away, I was just trying to decide what I wanted to do in my life. Like, what am I going to do now? I don't know. And I'm depressed and I'm crying. I'm just like a mess. And then I just ultimately settled that I was going to be a poet. I'm just going to be a poet and a speaker, and it's going to be dope. And I've been writing poetry for years again, because I was holding on to my poems also. I had one period where I wrote some 300-400 poems within 2 years, but I wasn't sharing those with anybody. So I said, I'm just going to share the poems, and I'm going to write books, and people are going to buy it. It's going to be awesome. And I shared that with a friend who was like, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I'm going to be a poet, and I'm going to write books, and I'm going to travel around the world, like speaking and doing poetry, and people are going to love it. And she said, yeah, but how are you going to pay your bills? And I was like, I just told you I'm going to be a poet, and I'm going to write books, and it's going to be dope.
Yeah.
So I ventured off at that moment to produce and publish my first book. And oddly enough, with all those poems that I had written, I had literally taken the books and bound them into like actual book form. So I had created a cover, did all this, taken the manuscript and like literally made it into the vision of the book that I wanted, 7 of them. So I already had books ready, but I was playing small. I was playing so small. Yeah. And a friend of mine asked me on the internet, or someone who followed me, I finally mustered up the gumption to share my writings on the internet. And one of my friends, Yashi, she's a friend now, Yashi, hey Yashi, from Philly, after reading a few of my poems, messaged me and said, so when's your book coming out? And again, I already have 7 manuscripts bound. I'm ready to like publish books at any moment. I'm like, well, that's why I'm posting poems now. I want to build up a following, and then when people like it enough, I'll drop a book on it. And she's like, basically, I tell her that she yelled at me, right? She's like, I did not yell at you. She basically urged me to stop making excuses and to just do it. And so I was like, oh, you know what? She's right. And so I just endeavored to go ahead and get out of my own way and to produce a book. So my first, actually I released 2 at the same time, December the 13th of 2013, I believe it was. I released my first 2 books for 2014, I don't remember what it was exactly. I released my first 2 books, Love versus the World, which is a book of poetry, and also a book called The Book of Qos, Qos, a play on cosmic. But it was compiled of a bunch of motivational, inspirational quotes that I just shared freely on the internet for about 5 years, as I was trying to motivate and encourage myself into space of understanding and motivating myself to just keep going, even though the journey didn't make sense. I'm like, God, why am I getting up at 4:30 in the morning to walk to the train station? It's freezing. Like, where's my car? Like, I don't understand this. Why is nobody dropping me off? This doesn't make sense. It's so weird. I hate this job. It's like all of it, and I didn't understand it. So I would get these motivational quotes would just kind of pop into my head, and then I would just share them on the internet. And I realized that those tidbits of inspiration also inspired other people. So it wasn't just for me. So I was like, okay, cool. And I continued to share. So I took a bunch of those and compiled the Book of Qos also to release both the same day. Kind of journeyed, or rather spent 7 months on the internet attempting to go viral. Yeah. Shame on you people on the internet for not helping me go viral. While I was posting poems. And I realized that I was kind of approaching it the wrong way. Instead of trying to go viral on the internet, and I was posting maybe 5-6 poems a day, and I was producing so much content, and I wasn't going back into the old poems that I wrote. I was producing brand new poems to feed the following of people who were following me that love my poetry. And I was like, I'm overworking myself. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm gonna have to produce so many poems, or I was publishing so many books because I was sharing these poems for free. So I just began to take all of the poems and then put them in the book so that the poems wouldn't just be floating around on the internet by themselves. I needed them to be in book form. So as I was on the way to like my 4th, 5th book published inside of like 2 years, I was like, yo, this is ridiculous. At this rate, I'm gonna have 50 books published in the next 10 years. I'm like, I can't continue that way. So I realized that it wasn't important for me to go viral on the internet. It was more important for me to get out and touch people and communicate with people and to connect with people that way. A few years, go by before Poetic Soul is finally born. Poetic Soul was born out of a situation where there was an event that I would frequent that went away because of it being wildly inconsistent. I won't mention that event. So I sort of ran that event producer down for over a year, saying, hey, bring that event back. The culture needs it. Like, we need the space. The event's flow was like a little bit different from the other open mics. You got to bring it back, And He blew me off essentially for an entire year, and then finally decides to sit down. We sit down and say, what do you need? What do you need help with? I've been out here, kind of doing my thing for the last couple of years. I can get you some help with a venue if that's what you need. And we found a venue.
Would you be opposed to letting us hear like a sample?
Absolutely,
of
I would.
Yeah,
absolutely,
let's hear
I would.
something.
No, I mean, I'd be opposed to
You
this.
would? Like even if it's a song or a little a poem, whichever.
I'll do a really quick one. I typically like to open my my sets when I'm performing with this poem called "Why Are You Here?"
Okay.
And I like to, even though I have art that runs the spectrum in terms of content or in terms of direction of the piece, I like to do motivational, inspirational pieces more than anything else to get people into a conscious space of action or a space of reflection or consideration for like what your purpose actually is here and why you're here. So I'll do "Why Are You Here?"
Okay.
I ain't got no worries, I ain't got no pain. All I've got is happiness and peacefulness to gain. My world is filled with sunshine, my world is filled with gleam. My world is filled with grace and endless possibilities. See, I ain't got no heartbreak, I ain't got no shame. All I've got is lessons learned, appended to my name. My life is filled with purpose, my life ain't mine to keep. I almost lose it every time I live it selfishly. See, I ain't got no worries, I ain't got no pain. All I've got is happiness and peacefulness to gain. In the honor of my name. But why are you here? Do you think you were born to work a 9 to 5? To consume all this world's resources, pay bills, collect foolishness, and die? That's a bold-faced lie. Our purpose is cultivation of life through extraordinary strides. And unless the way is paved for future generations, how the heck are they supposed to survive? We owe them our lives. And I ask why? Why are you here?
I guess one of the last questions that we like to ask everybody, with this being a lifestyle faith-based magazine, you talked a little bit about God. Do you have a favorite scripture or quote that you live by? I mean, besides your own quotes.
Yeah, not necessarily a favorite scripture. I think I'm finally getting into a place where the scriptures make sense as applicable to my life. So letting my light so shine that others might, glorify my Father who is in heaven is like, that's a real thing. So I feel like, and I said this in a video that I posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago, last week sometime, and I was so full, I was in a space of like just being full. And I was like, I have to share a message with people. And I don't even do this like motivational message thing on Facebook, but I'm just going to do it. And I was in Walmart. It's like 1 a.m. And I'm like, I'm in Walmart in the produce section. And I'm like, hey everybody, produce around me. And I just had this epiphany where I realized that we mock God and the ancestors every single day that we do not leave it all here, that we don't do the absolute most with what we have been gifted. So I'm really in this space of like, do the most with your life, like do the most with all the gifts. And I know that I held on to so many gifts for so long without sharing them with people. So, hey, family and friends back home in DC who fancy themselves like the folks who really, really knew me, and they're like, who is this guy? He's like on the West Coast singing and doing poetry. Like, who is this guy? So we spend a lot of time, I feel like, as human beings asking God for this, asking God for that. Like, everything in prayer seems to be ask and ask and ask. And God has already given us so much, so I feel like punishment you know, or things that we may deem punishment. Like, I'm being punished for this, or God's punishing me for that. Like, God's not punishing you at all. I think you're punishing yourself because of your poor choices and your poor decisions, yes, but moreover, your decision not to get into your purpose, to not do the thing that you were born to do. It's going to lead to a life of hardship and struggle and stress and, you know, discomfort, because it's supposed to. When you literally leave it all, share it all, give it all to the day. Give it all to today, everything, every encouraging word that I have, a song, if it'll help to raise somebody's spirit or raise their vibration, like, why would I not share it? I'm like, no, I only sing for the church. And that's God, that's so anti-God. Right. God didn't only give me a voice to go into a church and sing it and sing, or to sing to show people that I have this ability, this talent, this gift. And to encourage other people who are hiding their gift to share theirs as well. Like, it doesn't matter. People are going to talk about you anyway. Do the most. Yeah. You know, they're going to talk about you whether you are doing good or whether you're doing not so good. Right. So just do it anyway. Just do it. Give them a reason to talk about, you know, a reason to talk about you. So steer the narrative, you know. So I'm in that sort of space.
Great. That's awesome. Now, if our viewers, if everyone wanted to stay in contact with you, if they wanted to follow you on social media, you know, that's what this world is about anyways right now.
Which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Linking and connecting everyone.
Yeah, and connecting, being able to have that ability. What platforms are you on? And do you have a name that they can follow you on? Sure.
Yeah. So you can find me on all of the social media platforms under Qosmic with a Q. So Qosmic. I know I'm a poet and I should be like spelling things properly, but I was trying to be clever. So Qosmic with a Q, and also Qadence with a Q. So Qosmic on Instagram. It's an underscore and then Qadence. And I'm Qosmic Qadence on Facebook, QosmicQadence.com. Poetic Soul on Wednesday nights, every single Wednesday night here in Phoenix. We host that event at Club Downtown presently, and then we're on Thursday nights in Tucson. So for the folks in Tucson, Arizona, you come on a rock with on Thursday nights. I'm presently at Club 4th Avenue. So yeah, it's a kind of early evening event. Doors open at 7. The show itself starts at 8 o'clock. And the list is first come for first sign, first perform. Try to keep the bias out and keep the favoritism down. So people send me messages like, put me on the list, Q. And I'm like, no. You have to be in the building to sign it respectfully.
And Autumn Magazine has definitely been to one of the events before, and it's definitely a great time. It's a great time to spend time with people in the community and hear some really great talent. So I definitely recommend anybody and everyone out there to stop by and see, and even see this guy right here, because it is something great and you don't want to miss out on it. One of my last things, before we wrap up for today, do you have any last words? Do you want to say anything to, that's on your heart right now?
I'm
gonna start it, you sing back. You ready?
I guess I would probably say to everybody, the gifts aren't ours. The gifts are not yours to hold on to. So share them, enrich the world around you. And all of us have a responsibility to the generations coming behind us, whether you have kids or not, whether you plan to have kids or not, whether you like your family or you don't like your family. This life that we live is far bigger than us. And if you really think about that and frame it properly, you realize that right now we're sitting in chairs inside of a building that's air conditioned, and there's a camera rolling, and there are all these things, are lights, and it's artificial light, and we have devices like phones and and even this water bottled, and these things didn't exist 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 4,000 years ago. So somebody literally created those with the ingenuity from their brain, their heart, that gift that God gave them. They enacted, those visions and created these things that we literally take advantage of today, this dwelling. Once upon a time, people just roamed this very territory on foot. And when they slept outside and not inside. So all of us have something amazing to contribute to this world, and we should really stop being selfish and share that thing.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you guys once more for tuning in with us and hearing about this awesome guy and his story. And we'll have more to come, and we're definitely going to stop by and get some really great videos of him and everybody that's going to be performing. But stay tuned. Again, it's Brittany Clark with Autumn Magazine.